Have you ever wondered why your career or business seems to check all the boxes and yet seems to remain stuck? This is not by coincidence, it is by design. In today's episode, we're going to take a really famous ancient story and a concept in system engineering, and we're going to unpack this specific question. This is another episode of Molo Molo African Tech Stories. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Molo Molo African Tech Stories. I'm Dr. PK. Welcome. This week was incredibly interesting because I had the chance to go visit one of my clients in the UK. Incredible journey, incredible time there to really meet the new team and see how Molo Molo Tech, specifically me, can add value to their operations. And it was really something, a bit of an out of body experience because I really got to see a specific concept that I think myself and a lot of entrepreneurs and technical professionals struggle with, which is the concept of letting go, the concept of whether you are truly modeling the right system. Let me explain to you through the story. So, there's an ancient story, a biblical story about Jesus and a rich man. And this story goes like this, where this rich man went up to Jesus and asked him, "Hey, how do I inherit eternal life?" And Jesus, of course, began telling him the various things, including, honoring your father and mother, not being an adulterer, not lying, and so forth. And he basically said, "Hey, man, I'm doing all of that. I've done all of that." Then Jesus said to him, "Well, then uh, go and sell all your possessions." And then the Bible basically says the young man was downcast because he had great wealth. Now, if you end the story there, it doesn't really give context because the context is really a few verses later where Jesus' disciples ask him, "Okay, but so who can inherit the eternal life?" And Jesus says, "It's not about who, it's about who is the one who gives eternal life. That through God anything is possible." So it got me thinking. Again, this is not a spiritual podcast, but this point for me is so important, and it's got nothing to do with whether you believe in the story or not. But the point for me is the following. Now imagine this man. This man, of course, had built wealth. He had clearly lived a very righteous life. He was confident in the fact that he could essentially bring about evidence that made him confident about how he lived his life. And yet he stumbled. He got stuck. He got stuck on the premise of what it meant to achieve that goal. And he got stuck on one point, which is sell all your possessions, the very thing that you had built all these years, give it up. Now, when you think about it from the perspective of what Jesus is trying to say, is, in my view, he's basically saying, and which is also in the Bible, it says, then you will get treasures in heaven, i.e., the possessions that you have no value compared to what you will get when you give up those possessions. And I think it's got a lot to do with our careers. Yeah, as technical professionals, I help Molo Molo Tech and me, of course, help technical professionals to really excel, to really, fulfill their full potential. We also help through our engineering design capabilities and, of course, our model-based solutions. We try and help companies unearth what is hidden. And the one thing that I believe is a concept of today is unmodeled constraints. There's a concept in model-based system engineering that basically talks about the fact that whatever you've not modeled in your system that is of importance towards the goal that you're trying to achieve will eventually become a constraint to prevent you from achieving that goal. Unmodeled constraints. That is a very specific term in system engineering. And why is that important? It's important because I've seen over the years different companies, different projects that I've worked on, they need to make things more complex. They need to make the reality in the model more visible, as opposed to potentially what Jesus was saying is take away all these things that you were doing, your possessions needs to be removed. And in a way, what he's trying to say is that in our careers, in our businesses, the very thing that you think should bring identity to your business is potentially the very thing that prevents you from truly seeing your business, the model of your business with complete clarity on which direction you should go. And until you do that, i.e., not add in more complexity, but remove complexity so that you're able to achieve the very goal that you had in the first place. And that is a concept that oftentimes trips me up. It trips me up because there's fear there. The young man, the rich man, walked away with sadness. He walked away with a sense of inadequacy, a sense of, man, does that mean I am no longer able to present myself in that way just because of this goal? What will this goal even mean if I don't have these things? And that's essentially how one can also put it in a technical way, in a professional way, where you are basically saying, and a lot of us do that, where your identity, the work that you've put in, the work that you put in all these years, the studies, the projects, you putting your best foot forward all these years is something that potentially is an impediment towards your next big step, your next big goal. Same thing with your business. And I think for me, one of the big lessons that I'm learning through this is sometimes you have to let go. Sometimes you have to take away things. Sometimes pivoting doesn't mean taking that baggage with you as you pivot. Pivoting sometimes means leaving things behind as you pivot. And with that, attain a new goal and attain a new purpose in life that could potentially get you to the very thing that you had hoped for in the first place. And whatever that means, you would know. So, one of the main things for me in this trip to the UK was the fact that I would not have made that trip happen if I didn't let go of a few things. And one of them was security. Security of having to give without any sort of guarantee of returning whatever I'm giving. And that's consultancy. The business of consultancy, specifically in our area where we help aerospace companies really excel or boost their design capabilities, you have to give. You have to put your best foot forward. You have to always give your best self first. And only then would a return come back, i.e., you have to subtract, you have to diminish in a way in order for you to be elevated in the end. And I do think that is a classical model-based system engineering problem because oftentimes when we think as engineers we need to model things, the first thing we think about is how accurate can I make this model? But in actual fact, based on this concept of unmodeled constraints, is you potentially have to remove specific things in order for you to see the very thing that you should be modeling in the first place. And that is the crux of it. That is what we, as engineers, as technical professionals, should really think about. So the question really for me and you is, what is it that you and I have to remove in our careers, in our businesses, in order for us to truly see the very thing that we should double down on and the very thing that we should really focusing on? You cannot focus on everything. You cannot focus on just adding. Sometimes you have to focus on removing, on creating clarity, on allowing the emptiness of that removal to truly be poured by something that is a lot more purer, that's a lot more potent for you to get to that next step, for you to get to that next career or that next level of revenue in your business. I truly believe that pivoting is not about just changing direction. Pivoting sometimes is about removing the very things that hold you back, whether from your technical career or your business. So, in conclusion, I really do think we can learn from simple stories like that, that really allows us to really have perspective on how model-based system engineering specifically helps us to really bring clarity towards technical problems that have been talked about thousands of years ago. I'm Dr. PK. I hope this was helpful. It has been helpful to me to really think about it in a different way. And hopefully, if you want more clarity using model-based system engineering in this way, you know where to reach us. Our details is below, coming with this audio, with this video podcast, and we'll be sure to really get together and really talk about it. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. This is another episode of Molo Molo African Tech Stories. Until next time, ciao.